Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel where we discuss all things aviation. Angela to be here welcoming you back. Today we're in conversation with Pilot Tawi all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. She is a woman and African sister representing in the cockpit, and she has lots of advice for aspiring aviators. Stay the full course of this video. You will take a lot for yourself in your own aviation journey towards the cockpit. Welcome Tawi, and thank you. Perhaps let's just get down to the business of the day, because I know we have 30 minutes and time is precious. Basically what we're trying to do is to talk to a few people in the industry, talk to a few pilots, so that we get their stories, you know, their experience, their journey towards the cockpit. The whole aim of this is that young people who are intent on getting into the cockpit can learn and be inspired. We're looking at inspiring the African child to start with, because there are not so many black people in the cockpit. If you look at the cockpit, most of them are pure white male. So the second leg is we are looking at getting women into the cockpit. And if the girl child sees an African woman in the cockpit, can they pick up, you know, and begin to yearn to go into the cockpit as well. So that's where this is coming from.
Exactly. Yeah. Well done.
Thank you. Okay, from the beginning, I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What makes you tick? And then we'll gravitate from there towards what made you start studying towards aviation.
Yeah. Okay. So there's not really much that I can say about myself. I'm a Kenyan female. I live in Nairobi. I have worked in aviation for about 5 years now, although I don't really know if people can count 2020 as a year.
Yeah.
Most of us have been working from home, which is basically, if you're a pilot, that's sitting on the couch.
True.
Yeah, I have a degree in industrial design. I love fashion and anything to do with fashion and beauty. What else can I say? That's
the fashion beat, I must say, is visible on your Instagram. Keep it up. All right.
Yeah.
So,
it's at least I can when I'm not in uniform, it's a good change, because we tend to wear uniform all the time. It gets monotonous being in black pants, beige pants, a white shirt all year round.
yeah, I get you. So what did you train?
I trained in Canada.
Oh, nice.
In a small town called Oshawa. People confuse it with Ottawa, but Oshawa is about 45 minutes east of Toronto by road. So it's a small town, and then it's at the Oshawa airport where I trained with Canadian Flight Academy, which is a branch of this.
How did you find that experience? Was it your first time training abroad, or had you done your university there as well? Or was your training combined, where you come out with a degree and pilot training?
Okay, so no, my training wasn't combined. I first did a degree here in Nairobi at the Nairobi University, where I studied industrial design. And then so after 4 years, I graduated with a degree in industrial design, and then I went to Canada to fly. Whereas it wasn't my first time out of the country, it was my first time to be in school outside the country.
And that, I know aviation is very demanding. Even those of us who trained in our own home countries, it was still very demanding, but at least you could still walk back home at the end of it all. I wonder how you handled that.
Yeah, so what's interesting is I got the family friends of ours who lived there, though I'd never, family friends of my parents, I'd never met them. So when I got there, I was linked up with them, and they sort of became my parents. So I call them my Canadian parents. So it was very easy to feel like I was at home, because in the weekends I'd go over to their house. Every time they were going to a different town to visit any of their other children, they'd pick me up. They really did treat me like a daughter. So yes, I did get homesick. I'm not going to lie and say, I wasn't homesick coming from an African country, or let me say Kenya, you go and find that things are very different, and a lot of things are different. So you do feel homesick. Some things are not as easily accessible. Other things are just as easily accessible, but I really liked it there. Canadians are, the stereotype is real. Canadians are a friendly lot. These people are really, really nice and kind, you know, and welcoming. So I didn't feel out of place. Yeah, I experienced a lot of curiosity, but I didn't feel out of place.
Oh, nice. So what sparked the interest in aviation? Is this something you wanted to do since childhood?
No. No. Like any child, I kept changing. One month I want to be a doctor. If you meet a doctor, you want to be a doctor. You meet a vet, you want to be a vet. You know, I kept swinging, and I can't really pinpoint a time.
Yeah.
But I remember it was in high school where I finally just said I want to be a pilot. And my dad thought I was joking. He, in his head, he was like, this, yeah, you know, in a couple of months you'll want to be something else and we'll move on from it. But it stuck with me. I don't know what pushed me to decide I want to be a pilot, but it's just something that stayed with my spirit the longest.
Okay. Interesting. Most aviators would always reference their, decision to become a pilot to some childhood dream. It's interesting to see that with you, you vacillated between this dream and that dream until later in your teenage years, you started saying, you know what, I want to go into the cockpit. And indeed, you went and you pushed hard and you are where you are today. What do you fly today?
I am a bush pilot. I fly what is called in the bush a Caravan, which is a Cessna 208.
Nice one. That's a heavy machine. That's a heavy machine. Yeah.
Heavy machine. It's a good machine.
Well, talking from a general aviation perspective, from a 172 to a Caravan, that's.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about it, 172, then yes, Caravan is quite a nice leap, and quite a nice little bit of.
All right, and aviation is rather expensive. I mean, especially for the African child. I keep saying this because one of the barriers that keep the African child out of the cockpit, apart from the other prejudices, is the financial, barriers. How did you handle that?
Yeah, so you know what? Aviation is very, very expensive. That is something that nobody should sugarcoat, but it is possible. For me, I was sponsored by my dad's friend who paid for my entire flying all the way until I was done. What I've seen people do that has worked for them is to pay per hour. Because most schools, actually, all aviation is hour-based. It's not, as long as you're not doing it as a degree program, then the flying is hour-based. And when you get to 40 hours, you get your first license, which is the PPL. Then you get to, I think it's 210 hours, you get your CPL. So you can pay hour by hour, and that makes it easy, and it gives you bite-sized, bite-sized formula to go through the aviation program. So I've seen a lot of people who've done it that way and been able to finish, or just first pay for the PPL and then come in later and then pay for the CPL, which does work. It's expensive, but it's not impossible.
So basically, just people have to pace themselves, perhaps take up the modular approach, as you say, finish one license, move on to the other, add ratings as they go, and budget for themselves to fly a block of hours rather than thinking of the whole huge sum.
Exactly. It is, and there's also much to do. Much as I was sponsored for a big chunk, there's still a lot that you have to do after aviation, because I had to come back, convert my license, which my parents were still paying for. I had to come back and do my multi-engine rating. I had a bunch of other ratings to do, which is still part of the financial burden that still falls back on your parents, because they're like, okay, we've paid all this money and then you're still coming back and asking for more. And it's a long process, but it's one of the most rewarding careers. Any pilot will tell you it's one of the most rewarding careers that you can ever get into. It's just amazing.
Okay, so coming back with the Canadian license, you had to deal with the issue of conversion into a Kenyan license. So now you hold a Canadian license and an ICAO license issued by Kenya, isn't it? The Kenya CAA.
Yes, yeah.
All right. How was that process for you? Was it too cumbersome, or was it straightforward and doable?
So I'm going to be real here. The Kenyan aviation system is one of the most backward. I'm just going to put it, just say it as it is, because you come here and there are no books to study to do the conversion. You just kind of get a whole database of questions that you're supposed to go through and then go and sit for the exams. There is no guardianship. There is no, it's just something that has been carried from, I think, the 60s and has never really changed with the times. So you come in here and you fail a couple of times before you realize, okay, there's a formula on how to do this, and then you do it, which still doesn't leave you more knowledgeable. It just leaves you a crammer. You're able to retain information better at it. So yeah, the conversion is a bit tricky, but still doable. And then after the conversion, then you can now just be absorbed into the Kenyan workforce.
Okay, you're touching on that issue, the lack of clear reference material. I mean, I must say we are struggling with the same issue even in South Africa. As much as we think we're advanced, but when you look at how we train our people, the fact that you still have to rely on databases for you to pass exams. And if you don't have those databases, you're not going to pass at all. And there's no clear guidance on what exactly is the curriculum. What is in the syllabus? I think aviation organizations across Africa still have to reform and transform in that regard. Because if you look at EASA has clear guidelines on what are the requirements, what are the materials to use to study. But we are lagging behind.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, we've touched on the money issue. Apart from that, what were the other, two things. What were your challenges, your biggest challenges during your training? And what were your highlights, things that sort of stood out for you and you felt like I did right here?
Okay, so I'll start with the challenges. Aviation is hard. Studying to be a pilot is hard regardless of where you are. You're coming into a new field that a lot of people don't experience in everyday life. So you're coming in and you're learning every single thing from scratch. These are things that maybe you were never even said in your family in passing, especially if you don't have another pilot in the family. Some people have grown up with dads or moms who are pilots. So you kind of get, hear some of this terminology or a few things here and there. But I'm the first pilot in my family. So I'm coming into this field and I'm like, every single thing is new. And I'm also in a new country. So I'm learning I'm being bombarded with new information every day and having to adjust every single day. And I remember one time I called my mom crying and I was like, Mom, I can't do it. My instructor is so harsh. These lessons are so hard. I think at that time I'd repeated the same exercise, I think for 2 days in a row, and it was really frustrating my instructor. And I remember I had to go up the next day and do the same exercise before I could move on. I was so frustrated. My mom said, those harsh instructors, they're usually the best. So don't change him, stick with him, and you will be the best. And I stuck with him, and it turns out he was really good. And as a result, I have to say I am a really good pilot. So it was that was pretty challenging, just having to adjust in different aspects in my life. You know, living environment and career-wise and studying to be a pilot was hard. But the highlights for me, being in a new location now is a double-edged sword, because it's trying to adjust, but it's also Canada, so it's, you know, the people are wonderful. It's a you know, beautiful environment, and just getting to be out there learning all these new things. I loved it there, and I would certainly make Canada my second home. And then also being here and having this opportunity to fulfill my dream that a lot of people are not able to. I think I've just been really, really grateful for the opportunity to be a pilot.
Nice. Okay. I'm gonna put this bluntly. When it comes to the corporate world, work in any field, women are underrepresented. Perhaps the only place where they are not underrepresented is in the kitchen, which is where patriarchy and the social norms that were created sort of put them in the beginning. There, they're not underrepresented. But when it comes to money generating professions, you know, women, there's less and less women, whether it's in the academy, whether it's in aviation or in any other field, accounting, but it's even worse in aviation. Every time you fly, when you see a female pilot, something, you know, triggers your mind to say, the cockpit is transformed here. At least that's what happens to me. Each time I fly, I tend to look at the crew and I'm like, oh, okay, at least it's a little bit transformed. Now, Africa is far behind in that regard. And what do you think is causing this, and what shall we do as Africans to bridge the gap and ensure that the girl child finally enters the cockpit as well?
Yes. Angelo, you know, you've spoken about women being represented in different fields except the kitchen. But when it comes to money generating, even in the kitchen, we are ill represented if there is a monetary reward. So chefs worldwide that have even Michelin stars and all that are male. It's a male dominated field. As long as you can be rewarded and paid, it's men. Otherwise, if you're just in the home kitchen, that's women.
Yeah,
so
you're
yes,
right.
you are. Yeah. Here now, I think it's more of an individual approach rather than a mass approach, because there are gatekeepers to the patriarchy, people who don't want to see women succeed, and a lot of people do it unintentionally. So you'll find that you go and you're as a woman, I'll go and look for a job, and this has happened to me a lot of times where I go and apply for a job and my male counterparts with less experience get the job. I can say that this has happened to me more times than I can count. And then eventually when you do get into the workforce, promotion is harder. So I find that people who are less experienced than me are getting promoted, faster than I am getting promoted. And you try and keep your eye on the goal. It's a very frustrating place to be as a woman, because I do believe that women are better pilots. I mean, how many times have you heard that a woman has crashed? A lot of people will argue that it's because there are fewer pilots, but in all the years that these few female pilots have been flying, how many times have you had that women have? And I mean, even in schools where it's 50-50, it's a little hard to hear about this, but we're still not getting the chance, not because we're not good enough, but because there's a mindset that it's a field that is dominated by men, and that women can't do it. Even though in the past, like in the Second World War, women were the ones training the men how to fly, because they were the ones on the ground assembling the planes and literally, essentially, the engineers. So now when the male pilots, when the men come in, and the women now show them, okay, this is this type of plane, this is how to fly it, and then they go out to war. But nobody is ever going to tell you that. It's all this history. It's all this history that is pertains to women that nobody ever hears about. So you're going about your daily business thinking that women can't do it because you don't have the historical background, you don't have the reference, you don't have, you as a man or as a woman, you have no reference of women being able to do this. I remember when I told my grandma the first time that I was going to fly, she was skeptical. And I know my grandmother is very old school. She's my dad's mom, that is. She was skeptical. She's like, how are you going to do it? And you're a woman. And I had to explain to her that, grandma, it's not an issue of strength. It's an issue of brain power. It's an issue of the smarts and being intelligent. And then, you know, she had an aha moment at her age. She went like, oh, you mean you don't need muscles to be to be able to? She said, oh, okay, you know. And so I think it's a matter of, if you want change, and we need more male allies, and we need more men out there telling other men that, listen, women can fly. We need more men in positions of power hiring women as affirmative action, because that's important. Say to yourself, as a man in a position where you can hire people, I have 5 slots, or I have 6 slots. I'm going to hire 3 men, and then I'm going to purposefully keep 3 slots open for women. Because if you don't do that, you're always going to have that one token woman or no women. We have companies in Kenya that run with absolutely no women in the flight deck. And it's ongoing, and nobody is saying anything, and it's really frustrating. So yeah, that's
all right. Yeah, it's important. The points that you're raising are important. We're dealing with the same issues in South Africa, the representation of women in the cockpit. But secondly, what we're dealing with here at home is the issue of race. It's at the same level as the issue of women, because there are no blacks or people of color in the cockpit. They're not represented. And also women are totally not represented. Or where women are, they're most likely to be white women than black women. So we have we have that problem that we're dealing with. One of the, if you raise something about people believe women can't fly because they've always had that, and we need to change the narrative. It's very important to do that, because in South Africa, the narrative is the moment you allow affirmative action, people, those gatekeepers, start talking about lowering the standards, endangering aviation, which implies that women cannot fly, black people cannot fly. It's those narratives we need to start striking down and bring in a new narrative to say, no, this is absolute nonsense. If you have brains, you can handle an aircraft as long as you're trained. All right. As a parting shot, what would you say to the girl child in Africa today who aspires to become a pilot?
I would say that it's very important for you as a woman and as a girl aspiring to fly to not let go of that dream. Because I looked at women before me to fuel the fire, that I could fly, that I could be, you know, more than what people were saying I could be. So I had reference points and people to look up to say I can do it. And now I'm here today, and it's important for me to sit here and not give up, because there's somebody looking at me. My niece believes that only women are pilots, because I'm the only pilot that she knows in her life. So she says no, men can't be pilots. She's only 6.
Nice.
So for her, can be pilots, and that's really important for me, because she's looking up to me, and it's important that she can see that women can do it, and other young people can see that women can do it. So please don't give up on that dream. Push through, no matter how hard. It's not always hard, but there will be hard times. Push through, because there's somebody looking at you and watching to see do it. And then when you're able to do it, when you do that and you're sitting on that seat, where we do need more women on that seat, then somebody in a generation coming in the next generation coming up will be able to look at you and say, we can do it. And that's how we are going to change this narrative. That's how we're going to change the world. That's how we're going to have more women sitting in these seats in male dominated fields, more women in the flight deck, more female surgeons, more female lawyers, engineers. That's the only way to change it. Just keep the ball rolling, push through. You're important. You're in a position of power just because you want to be a pilot. So push through.
Tawi, thank you so much. I am sure that will motivate a lot of girl children out there to see people like you who are already ahead and doing it and passing down words of wisdom like this. I thank you very, very much. I will let you know when this episode goes online. And please do stay in touch, just in case we need you in the future to motivate our young African minds. We'll knock on your door again.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I must say, this was quite nice to be able to tell my story. I remember I looked at your profile and I said, okay, yes, why not? He wants to inspire young people. I want to inspire young people. We're really on the same boat here. So I appreciate that you reached out.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and have a good day. Bye.
Yes, enjoy yours.
I hope you took a note from the advice given by Pilot Tawi in the video we've just seen right now. And Angela Dube here urging you to keep adding those hours. Remember, with every hour, the cockpit beckons, whether it's an hour of studying, an hour of flying, an hour of searching for more information, an hour of watching these exciting interviews. All of them are geared towards leading you towards the cockpit. Keep working hard, keep that dream alive. That's all that you need. You will one day enter that particular cockpit. Don't forget to click like on the button below, and don't forget to subscribe. It's the only way we can grow this channel. It's the only way we can reach out to future aviators, aspiring aviators, and make Africa great again. Cheers.